All right, so let's get started with our next session, which is going to be on the Quicksight Enterprise BI tool. Just as a reminder, put your questions in the chat to be answered by our session speaker later today or later at the end of this session during the Q&A portion. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Davis to kick things off for us.
Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see so many people here today. I'm here to talk about Quicksight. I want to go to the next slide. I know that the tool's been around for almost 2 years, but we have a lot of new users in the community who are just finding out about us. So I want to give you all a background on what it is, as well as how do you start using it and kind of where we're going, some updates that have occurred since the last year, and where new updates that are coming in the next few weeks. So things that I want everybody to understand is how do you get started with Quicksight, whether you're a dashboard creator or a user. Also, you're going to get into it. You're going to start building stuff, using stuff, and you're going to have questions. I want you guys to know where to go and get help. Also, just kind of where we're going in the next few weeks. All right. So what is Quicksight? How do you use it? So Quicksight is AWS's BI tool, business intelligence tool. It's fully managed, cloud native. What does that mean? That means that AWS stands up this instance. There's no server updates. We don't have to install anything to make this tool available. Everybody just automatically gets an account, and there's no maintenance windows, no planned downtimes. AWS, that's their job, is to keep this tool up and running, continuously deploying new features for us to use. Also, because it's an AWS tool, it nicely integrates with data elsewhere on AWS. So whether it's in S3, Redshift, if you have a different relational database, you want to get connected to a BI tool, we can support that. Also, if your data doesn't exist anywhere in the CDR or CAP environment, you can upload flat files directly into Quicksight so that you can make visuals off of those. Because it's a BI tool, it allows people to visualize your data, right? So you have data in databases, Excel spreadsheets, but let's bring them to life. Let's really, share that information with the key decision makers so that they can make improvements for their organization. So for Quicksight instance, this is an enterprise tool. So anybody who has a HARP or an EUA ID automatically can go in right now to idm.cms.gov, log in, click on the CCSQ Quicksight chiclet or tile, and you're in. So come back, go check it out after the presentation. But if you're already there, you can do side-by-side tutorials. So if everybody at a minimum is a dashboard consumer. So what does that mean? That means that you have the ability to view dashboards and use that data, make really awesome informed decisions, and go out and make the world better. Now, how do you know if you're a dashboard consumer or not? When you log into Quicksight, on the left side of the panel, you'll see favorites, recents, my folders, shared folders, depending upon your account permissions, and dashboards at the very bottom there. That way, everybody has dashboards. So if that's all that you see, you're a dashboard consumer. So if you click on the dashboard button, you will get a list of dashboards that are available to you. Those are going to be dashboards that you have been granted permission to, or that other people have developed and published and made available to everybody in the CCSQ Quicksight instance. We have over 2,100 users in CCSQ Quicksight, so there's going to be something there for you, even if this is the first time that you're logging in. So after you click on a dashboard and you pull one up, this is what you're going to see. You're going to have access to information, visuals that somebody else created. Just some general navigation tools around here. So in the black bar is Quicksight and the name of the dashboard. Next to it, you'll see a star. If that star is open like it is on this screenshot, it means, hey, it's there. But if this is like one of your favorites that you want to come back to repeatedly, go ahead and click on that star. By clicking on that star, that will then show up when you click on your favorites on the left side panel. So if you see a ton of dashboards, if you're one of those really popular data viewers and consumers and you have too many dashboards, this is a way to kind of get your filtered preferred list. General navigation of the dashboard then, below the blue bar are different tabs within a dashboard. People can make a single tab dashboard. They can make dashboards that have over 10 tabs. So use those tabs to help navigate within a dashboard. A lot of dashboard creators create like an overview tab. So if you're not sure what this dashboard is, they use the overview tab to try to describe what's the dashboard, right? Like what's in it, where is the data coming from, how to contact people if you have questions about it. And then you can click on the different tabs and that will get you in to see all the visuals and the content. Now, as a dashboard consumer, these are interactive. So you can go and check out, you put your mouse over, one of the lines and pop out some of the detailed information, check out trends over time. And you also have the ability, if the dashboard creators gave you the ability to export some of this data, you can. So there's two ways to do it. One of them is in the blue bar in the right-hand corner. There's a bookmark, and then there's like an export feature. And if you use that export feature as the ability to export the whole report as a PDF. So if you want to go and share this around, print it off on paper, whatever you want, you can export this as a PDF. If you want to look at one of these graphs and you want to get the data versus not in the graph, but in like a tabular format, if your dashboard creators allowed it, if you click on those three stacked dots that show up for that individual panel, and then on the next slide, it will give you some options. You can export it as a CSV or an Excel file, depending upon what permissions were set for that specific dashboard. And if you select to export it as a CSV, you'll get a pop-up downloads window within Quicksight. When it's ready, you can then click to download, and all that data that was in that visual now shows up as a tabular format. So this is a good way to share information for your consumers if they still like want to kind of dig in a little bit deeper. This is a way to give them access to the data that's in the visual. This does not give dashboard consumers the ability to like actually access the underlying data. It's just the data that's been presented in that visual. Right. Oh, I see some questions coming in. The website again to access Quicksight is idm.cms.gov. You'll log in with your HARP and EUA ID and then click on the CCSQ Quicksight tile or chiclet. And if you don't have, there's somebody who direct messaged you, I'll follow up with you later. Okay, great, thank you. Next slide. So dashboard creators. We have over 130 dashboard creators currently active in CCSQ Quicksight. That means that you have the ability to create beautiful visuals, get information, create new variables, and get that information into the hands of your consumers so that they can make informed decisions, new decisions, highlight things that get lost in the databases of data. So this is just one example of kind of what you can create for your consumers. You can put things in a tabular dashboard. You can pull in data from various different data sets. You can create maps. You can make drill downs. You can filter. You can do a ton of really cool stuff. So if you're a dashboard creator, you'll know that when you log in on the next slide. On the left-hand panel, you'll see more than just the dashboards at the bottom. You'll see analyses. You'll see data sets. And those are the big three foundations for working within Quicksight. Everything starts with data, yay. Data sets are what you start with if you're just logging in, just new to Quicksight and not taking over somebody else's work. And when you click on data sets, you'll have access to create a data set from a new data source. This is where you would upload your Excel files if that's the only source where your data lives. And at the bottom, there's existing data sources. So when we onboard you into Quicksight as a group, if you have your own database that you need access to, we'll work together so that you can get direct database access from Quicksight. So that will be then listed as an existing data source for you. So you don't have to worry about exporting data out of a database, uploading it as an Excel file. You can just get direct access to create a data set from your database. And then after you have like your data sets created, on the next slide, you'll want to go to the analyses. So an analysis is where you're going to come and pull your data together, make those visuals, show new variables, everything like that. So this is just gives you a quick idea about, kind of what that view looks like. Visual types at the bottom on the left shows you all the different kind of available options Quicksight has to create whatever it is that you need to communicate to your consumers. After you've gone in and you've created all of the visuals, put in all the text, just made everything exactly what you want it. If you click on the share button in the blue, it's like the little V kind of single to multi-node. If you click on that, you're ready to publish. On the next slide, you can publish the dashboard. You can publish the analysis, and that's what becomes your dashboard. So analyses have access to the underlying data sets. Dashboards only contain the data that you've put in those visuals. So there's a clear line so that your users cannot go back to your database and get access to that data. They only have access to the data that you have put in the dashboard. And that's really kind of all. And then on the next slide, it'll walk you through what are the steps to actually publish it. You have some options. You can publish it as a new dashboard. Great, type in a new name, go ahead. You have some options down below under the advanced publishing options about what you want your consumers to have access to or not have access to. Or if this is hey, I just created a new update to an existing dashboard, you can select that option and then select which dashboards you have developer or creator access to replace that existing dashboard. So it's a way to automatically, update your dashboards without creating a new dashboard ID and link and that kind of stuff. All right, I see a few questions coming in. I see a map at the bottom. Can it geocode addresses to lat long? I'm going to tell you where you can find out the answer to that because I don't know that one off the top of my head. And does it have access to several geographic layers? It does. You have the ability to drill down and zoom in based upon the level of granularity of your data. All right, and who can get access to dashboard creator? Good question. Next slide, please. And then this is, just a published version of your dashboard. Next slide. All right. So for those that don't see a shared folder, that's fine. It just means that we haven't signed you up or you haven't been granted access to a shared folder. A shared folder is just really a space for groups to work outside of having access to everybody. So we have over 31 different shared folders right now for various groups that want to control access to who gets to be a creator and who gets to be a viewer. So not all the dashboards should be shared with everybody in CCSQ. They should be, shared with a small subset. And that's where the shared folders comes in, is that it provides that space to control access to all of those things. So when you sign up and work with us, we'll set you up with a shared folder. You get to name it, whatever makes sense to you guys, as long as it has been used before. And what comes in each shared folder is 4 subfolders. So here's an example of the Quicksight prod ops. So you have a prod folder, which is, just Quicksight ops. You have a UAT, a test, and a dev folder. And this is meant to be able to partition access and views based upon your kind of developmental cycle of a dashboard, right? So as a developer, I may want to, create a dashboard, create an analysis, but I want to test it out on some of my other teammates, right? Or test it out with my key stakeholder at CMS. And I can then put it in that test folder where my testers can come in and they'll have access to what I put in there. And that gives them the ability for me to get feedback on, hey, how's my development going? Am I missing something? Do you like this color scheme, that color scheme? Whatever you work through with your normal dashboard development lifecycle, this folder structure is there to support that. So that's why we have dev, test, UAT, and then your prod folder. This is where you want to publish your fait accompli dashboard. And this is where we'll give your dashboard consumers view access to just this production folder. And on the right, we have on our website, on the CCSQ web Confluence page, an outline of what all are the permissions and the roles. So a viewer for a shared folder only gets to see this production folder and only the dashboard assets. They don't see the data sets. They don't have access to the analyses. Same thing with viewer and tester. They only have access to the dashboards, not the analyses or the data sets. And they only have access to whatever folders correspond with their permissions. Then we have developer and deployer. So this is where those two roles have the ability to create and edit. So in the dev and test folders, both roles have the ability to create data sets, edit them, create analyses, edit them, and then publish and edit dashboards. It's only the deployer that has the ability then to publish dashboards into the UAT and the production folder. So work within your group to see who makes sense. We have groups where everybody is a deployer, and then they have, their end users, and everybody's a viewer. So you do get this out of the box. Whether or not you use it is totally up to you and your teams and what makes sense. But we wanted to mimic just the standard kind of developmental life cycle to support that. All right, I have a few questions coming in. So that's who can get access as a creator. So you'd be a developer or a deployer. Does a consumer need to have a HARP ID, or could it be someone that does not have access to the IDM applications? Right now, everybody has to have a HARP ID or an EUA ID to access Quicksight. In a little bit, I'll talk about how you could share dashboards with those folks that don't. And then another question is, you can create geographical hierarchies in your data to drill down between geographic levels. Thank you, Timothy. That was really great. And then is it possible to export out of a dashboard and then import it into a different instance of a Quicksight account? We have done this once. It is extremely difficult because of the way that Quicksight requires kind of having access to the data source and the data sets in order to recreate an analysis in a dashboard. I can work with you if you have a particular use case where it's too cumbersome to kind of recreate it in this Quicksight instance. But right now, AWS has not provided a seamless solution for moving between Quicksight accounts. All right, next slide. So sharing. Quicksight allows people to share with the right permissions with individual users, shared folders, and user groups. So this is if you're a dashboard creator and you're ready to share your dashboard, you're going to have some additional questions about who you want to share it with. So initially, if you're kind of working in your dev folder, you want to make sure that you add it to that dev shared folder so that your other developers can work on it, can view it, kind of put it in a shared location. By default, everything gets stored into your own personal folder, but this is an ability when you're working on a team, put it in a location that other people with that same Quicksight role access can access it as well. But if you're ready to share your dashboard, with your end users, you can add it to a shared folder, which means going back out to kind of the overview page, clicking on the folder you want to share it to, and then on those three buttons, you can add that particular item to a folder, and depends upon what access you have to those folders, but your customized list of what you have access to will show up when you do that. This is also where you can set whether or not you want everyone in the Quicksight account to see your dashboard. So you can select that toggle button at the bottom. Also, below the toggle button is, if you have it enabled for everybody, you also have a choice about whether or not it's discoverable in Quicksight. And what that means is that it shows up like in a search bar. So it's kind of another duplicative way for your end users, your consumers, to find your dashboard if it's just shared with everybody, because it doesn't live in a shared folder. So it's just generally available on that dashboards tab. All right, let's check out the next slide then. I also wanted to highlight there are different ways to share dashboards. One of those is through email. So if your users don't like logging into Quicksight, but they have Quicksight account, you can email them out a dashboard as a report. You can do that once a day, once repeating, once a week, once a month. You can set the time and the schedule on where that is. And you have additional abilities to kind of customize the content in the email that goes along with that. And you get to select who the recipients are. By default, it goes to whoever's already shared with that dashboard, but you can check and uncheck individuals based on that if you want to customize it. Let's see. So there's also the ability to share dashboards. Next slide. There's two different ways. You can embed a dashboard in a standalone application. That does require that users be registered still with Quicksight. So that means that they have to have a HARP or an EUA ID. Detailed information about how to embed a dashboard in a standalone application is available on Quicksight's user guide. I know that the iKeys group is a big user of this. So they build their dashboards in Quicksight and then they embed them into the iKeys application. And it looks just like you're in Quicksight, but it removes that black Quicksight header bar. So it looks like it's an integrated function and feature of your standalone application. Also, Quicksight has the ability to embed for anonymous users. So this is for those users that don't have HARP or EUA IDs. Quicksight has that ability. It is not turned on in the CCSQ Quicksight instance. We are just now starting to interact with groups, figure out who would like this capability and feature, and start working together with you and CMS and CCSQ leadership to figure out what's the most appropriate way and doesn't make sense to turn on this feature. So if you have users who you don't, or they will never get HARP IDs or EUA IDs, but you still need to share this with them, please reach out to me on the QNet Slack channel, Help Site Quicksight. Just quickly be like, hey, I'm interested in this feature. I'll reach back out to you. We'll kind of set up a quick chat so that we can better understand, what your use case is. Do you currently have a solution? Is this a new solution? Things that we're going to be interested in getting for CMS to help make their decision on this is, how many users are you looking to use to integrate to who would use an embedded dashboard on a public website without having one of these IDs? The reason that we need to kind of go a little bit in depth on that is that for us to turn this feature on in the CCSQ Quicksight instance, it does change some of the pricing structure on the number of times people use those embedded anonymous dashboards. So obviously this has a cost implication, which is why we want to make sure that we understand your use case and the benefits to CMS, and then we can go and start estimating what those costs are so that CMS can make an informed decision on turning this on or off or enabling certain groups or other groups to use that. All right. Next slide. So getting started with Quicksight. Hopefully I've convinced you all this is really great. If you're not there, come join us. But where do you want to get started? First, check out CCSQ's analytic and tool page. This is where you can get a quick oversight on what Quicksight is. If you like, if I talk too fast or miss something and you're like, hey, come here to this page. This will kind of give you a quick not verbal, but obviously a written explanation along with links on where you can learn more. On the next slide is when you're ready to get access. This could be you want access, you're a new group, you want to start checking it out with your teammates, come and you can request a shared folder. If you are part of a group and you're like, hey, my colleague has access to this shared folder, but I don't, put in an access request and be like, hey, I want access to this shared folder. That'll come to us, and then we'll work with that security officer to make sure that it's appropriate for you to have access to that shared folder at that particular role, and then we'll get you access. If you also need to change permissions, if you're currently a viewer or a consumer, like you just see dashboards, but you're like, hey, I want to start trying this out, you can put in a request, and with approval, we can get you so that you can have the ability to create your own dashboards as well. So to do all of that, you just go to the training and onboarding tab on the CCSQ data analytics page, request getting access, and select Quicksight. A few things that you'll need is your HARP ID or an EUA ID. If this is your first time using Quicksight, we're going to need you to log in because the Quicksight account tied to your HARP ID is not automatically created. We need you to log in once so that it's created in Quicksight. And then on step 3, you just click on the blue button. It'll open up a request form. Just type in your information, hit submit, and then it comes to my team and we'll take it from there. So try to make it easy on you guys. We'll take care of the approvals. and get you going. All right, next slide. Now, because Quicksight is an AWS tool, they are constantly coming out with new features, new updates, but they also have a ton of information about how to create some of the things that have come up in the questions, right? Like, how do I create calculated fields? How do I do this? How do I do that? This would take me like literally, all week to go through this individually. But what I wanted to do was just get you guys to know where to go and try to find answers to these questions on your own. The first place I would say the most commonly used features for creating dashboards, we've put together kind of how-to pages under the training and onboarding and on the knowledge base. If you click on Quicksight, there's, the Quicksight basics that'll take you to AWS documentation. And then all the how-to pages underneath are different Confluence pages that we've created to just kind of get you going. Just, very simply, how do I do this? Where is this called? Where do I find this, in the list within Quicksight on the analyses? This will get you up and going, try to get you going, and, you can start going from after that, going deeper, going in different directions. On the next slide is where we have the key resources that when you really want to start developing your dashboards. The AWS user guide, that's where we all go. I have it like bookmarked on my browser. That's where, when you're like, oh wait, how do I do this again? Or what is it called? It has a nice search feature, walks through many different detailed steps to create some of the more complex visualizations or explore different aspects of Quicksight to create very customized, unique, informative visualizations. If you're like, hey, this is still overwhelming, I don't want to read, multiple pages of a web page, AWS has free training sessions, and those are recorded video virtual workshops that they have where it's very interactive, where they have somebody actually going in and typing it and talking through, like, this is when you would want to use this, or here's, some of those gotchas. They do a really great job of updating that content, especially when like a new feature is coming out or rolling out in Quicksight. So it's really great for those visual learners like me. And I like that they're videos, so I can pause and go back, and it's really great. Definitely check that out. And then for new features, there is a specific site that AWS maintains. So they just kind of push out releases. They don't necessarily do a big splash with it, but this is where you would go to find out if there's something new, if something's changed, like they, 2 months ago, they changed some of the visuals in the blue bar, and all of a sudden people are like, wait, what's going on? And you're like, oh, there it is. And they provide detailed explanations for what changed, as well as kind of some how-to videos. And lastly, like, we're here to support each other, right? So there's going to be questions that aren't necessarily Quicksight specific, but maybe data specific, and how do I want to represent this? And I know other groups are using similar sets of data, creating different variables. So, we're a great network of users. So there's peer-to-peer help on the QualityNet's Help Quicksight channel. Also, if you're running into technical problems where you're like, hey, this is not working as I would expect, or what the documentation's expecting, reach out to us there. We'll connect with you. We'll figure out like, hey, maybe there's a bug in Quicksight. And if there is, we then escalate that to Quicksight support and let them know, provide all the information. We'll work with you and getting that particular bug resolved. So that's how you can get help. You're not alone. Yeah. And then next slide. All right. So some of the new stuff that we haven't talked about before, maybe in one prior comps call, was we finally have Workbench integration with Quicksight. So Philip last session went over kind of all of the CDR kind of infrastructure. So everybody's Workbench is backed on an S3 bucket. And since S3 is one of those native sources that Quicksight can integrate with, we have worked with the CDR team so that they can create a specific publishing path in your Workbench that we then set up the permissions to so that you can access that as an existing data source in Quicksight. So this is super helpful when you're doing all your data with data from the CDR, you have your curated data sets plural, and you want to start creating these visuals. This is a way for you to automatically get access to that data from Quicksight without having to manually download it out of your Workbench and then upload it into Quicksight. we cut that path out. So that's why now there's direct integration between your data and Quicksight. This is really great because as your data changes, that updated and refreshed data will show up in your Quicksight dashboard. If you're a group that has a workbench but doesn't have a shared folder in Quicksight, reach out to us and we can set up, because the permissions have to match between your workbench and a shared folder in Quicksight. We'll set you up with a Quicksight shared folder, and then we will work on enabling the permissions so that you can access your publishing path in your workbench. All right, next slide. So those were words. I'm a pictorial person, so I just put together just kind of a quick landscape of like, what is it that I just talked about? So this is you as an analyst, consumer, data scientist, logging into idm.cms.gov. You'll have access to SAS Viya or Quicksight, but you'll want to start off with SAS Viya because that's how you have access to the data in the CDR. You'll do your computations, create your data sets, save those off to your workbench, and then put those tables in your dedicated publishing path that's accessible to Quicksight. And on the back end, then we've set up the CCSQ data warehouse so that data can reside on Redshift. And then from Quicksight, then you will see a CCSQ data warehouse with your user group name attached to it as an existing data source in Quicksight. And from there, then you can select that and start creating your analyses off of those data sets. So it's more seamless, no exporting, no uploading. So we're very excited about that. I think we've onboarded over 12 groups with this feature and functionality. So if you're missing out on it, please do reach out to us. We're kind of at that point where we can start working in the backlog on people who have workbenches and who are in Quicksight but might not have that integration. Or if you're new and you don't have a shared folder in Quicksight, reach out to us. We'd love to get you set up with this functionality. All right, next slide, please. And this is, so once we have your integration to your workbench, this is what it'll look like from Quicksight. So you'll click on data sets, you'll scroll down to the existing data sources, you'll pull out yours. You'll pull up your schema name from your workbench, and then you'll see the tables within there. So you can start creating, very push button, very easy. So we strongly encourage groups to get this integration going for themselves if you don't already. So I wanted to talk about some upcoming changes that we're actively working on that we think will benefit everybody in the community. So right now, when you want to request a shared folder or request additional permissions, we need to send you to that CCSQ Data and Analytics Confluence page and push that blue button and request those items. We're working on moving that so that you can go into HARP and request access to existing user groups within Quicksight, also request changes in permissions. And the reason for moving it into HARP is because that's where every other CCSQ application manages this. And it provides the ability for your security officers to approve those within HARP rather than us having to reach out to your security officer to obtain their approval. This leaves it in HARP. It'll be like every other CCSQ application. It should be more streamlined and more automated. The nice feature about this as well is that we're also going to take all of the existing HARP entitlements or HARP roles that exist in HARP and set those up as user groups in Quicksight. So we have groups that have existing HARP entitlement groups that have a ton of people in them already, and they want to share dashboards with those existing groups. But right now we'd have to recreate and add them individually to one of our Quicksight groups. And that doesn't really work for, hundreds of users. Also, it's not really sustainable. So by pulling in all of the HARP entitlement roles and making those available to you as a user group to share your dashboards with, this we think will really save you a lot of time and sanity, and able to make sure that your dashboards are getting into the hands of your data consumers faster and easier. So that way people aren't scared about Quicksight and something new. All right, next slide. So this is just what it'll look like. We're working on it right now. I don't have a date. I will give you a date as soon as I possibly can. But right now when this becomes available, you'll log into HARP. You will select CCSQ Quicksight as a program. And from there, you will see all of the existing shared folders that we have in Quicksight and all of those roles. So viewer, tester, deployer, developer, that's where you will go and select those requests for those permissions and accounts. Those will automatically go to the security officer for that shared folder. They'll log into HARP, they'll approve it, and then you'll have access to all those additional shared folders and permissions automatically. All right. I think with that, we're at the end of my presentation. So I'll open it up to questions. I tried to answer them as I went through them because I know we covered a lot of content.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. So there were a couple of questions that were in the chat that you weren't able to get to. First one was, is it possible to export out a dashboard and then import it into a different instance of a Quicksight account?
No. The short answer is no. Quicksight does not make it easy to move between accounts. But if you run into a situation where you're like, we can't possibly recreate it, reach out to me and we'll try to figure out a solution and support the movement into CCSQ Quicksight.
Okay, thank you. So next question is, does Quicksight give the option to create custom calculated fields or formulas as in the case of Tableau?
Yes, they do. So Quicksight does, when you go into the data sets, you have the ability to kind of write SQL code and queries and create new variables and new fields. Yes.
Great. So this next question, I'm not sure if you addressed this yet, so forgive me if I'm repeating this question for you. Someone asked, does a consumer need to have a HARP ID, or could it be someone that does not have access to the IDM applications?
Yeah, so right now, today, yes, you have to have a HARP ID or an EUA ID to access the dashboards in Quicksight. If you are looking to share dashboards with people that don't have a HARP ID or an EUA ID, Quicksight does have the ability to embed a dashboard into another application or on another public website where anybody in the world can access that dashboard in that location. We don't have that turned on right now. We're working with CMS. So if that capability would fit your need for your non-IDM users, reach out to me and we can have a quick conversation to figure out kind of like the scope and the use case that you're looking to fill so that we can work with CMS on getting that enabled.
Great. So the next is just a comment, I would say, not necessarily a question, but I want you to comment on, Sarah. The user wrote, please remember that some of us that want a Quicksight role are already the SO for our state. We cannot approve our own access. Do you have any comments for that? I think this is in regards to the HARP integration.
Yeah, you're pushing on a question that I don't. So I guess I would assume that the security officer can approve themselves for access. But if that's not the case, let me figure out and go work on what other groups have done in the past.
I can probably answer that one. So typically, you cannot approve yourself for a role. So if an organization has two SOs, one could approve the other. So there is a way, but it requires two SOs in this particular use case.
That makes sense. And if you're a single security officer for your group, let's work on finding you a backup.
Yeah, I highly recommend we establish a secondary just in case you're on vacation or something. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for your presentation today. That looks like that is all the questions in the chat. So our next session will begin at 2 o'clock, and it's entitled Using Data to Protect Beneficiaries and Evaluate Public Health Policies. So let's go on a 17-minute break, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock with the next session. Thanks, everyone.